Welcome to the Family Pictures Podcast. I'm Michael Branson Smith, and I'm here with
Jim Groom.
And we're back in our humble little abodes, our semi-basement spaces.
Yes.
And these tiny spaces. No longer the nice, big, massive cuddle couch.
Oh, I love the cuddle
last
couch.
week's new. Yeah, that was pretty great. Thank you, Jim Groom. If you didn't listen last week, was in the States for a rare. Or actually, you visit the States quite a lot. And he was lucky for the first time to come visit my place, and we podcast sitting nice and comfy next to one another on my couch in New Paltz, which was pretty great. And my wife and mother-in-law absolutely adore Jim. They're like, he's so great.
This is the beginning of me invading your family, MBS.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, because we are
the Family Invasion series. Here we go. Jim Groom
and it's going to be a full invasion because we are on, our fourth film of the Family Intruder series in episode 63 of the Family Pictures Podcast. And this time it is a full family invasion. It is, with
family invasion,
with, Fatal Attraction and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle was two jilted women. And now after that, we had a semi-sympathetic Robin Williams from 1 Hour Photo. But this time, we're going full sympathy for the grifter family in the Academy Award winning, Palme d'Or winning, third picture to ever do so, 2019 masterpiece by Bong Joon-ho, Parasite. Yeah. So wait, tell me your relationship to Bong Joon-ho and Parasite, both.
I'm no relation to
no, not even. Have you watched Snowpiercer?
I didn't like Snowpiercer really, and I wasn't crazy about it. But I did really, and so I was joking, no relation to him. But I really loved Parasite when it came out. Actually, Antonella saw it in the theater. And she was you have to see this movie. You're going to love it. And I was like, because I'm kind of I'm one of those people, once people tell me I have to do something or I should really see something, I'm like, no, I don't.
You're so stubborn.
I am so. It's so stupid, too. Antonella's my cultural conduit to all things good. And even with her, I'm like, no, I'm not going to. And she's like, what?
You can't make me.
Stupid. But as usual, she was right. And it's funny because one of the things that's interesting is my youngest is getting into film and he's watching a lot of film. And this, is one we watch because I've seen this film several times since it's come out. And he loves this film. This is in his top. This is in his pantheon. He thinks this is just great. And I wanted to ask him before this podcast, why, but I wasn't able to. So my relation to him really comes through Parasite. Snowpiercer, I watched after Parasite thinking I would like it, and I just couldn't get into it.
How about Mickey 17? Did you watch that one? You just don't like science fiction. What the hell?
I like science fiction. Mickey 17, I couldn't get myself around Robert Pattinson, so I did.
Okay.
I have, with everybody, I'm sure, I have problems. I have things I have to work out, right? And I don't have the wealth so that I have that iron that gets rid of all the creases.
Money is like an iron. You're right. It just smooths everything out.
What a great
so is that
line
is that the idea? It is so good. It's I guess that's the way we should look at basically all blockbuster pictures. They're all smoothed out. There's not much depth to that. Ultimately,
it's interesting, and we can go a lot of places, and we should do production notes and everything. But you're saying that, and my reaction to this film is this film centers around a beautiful house, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah,
and that is
so.
Core. Okay, anyway, let's go to it. Let's do the production notes and anything, but I have something to share with you, Michael, once we get there.
Okay. So
are we ready?
We're ready.
Are we jumping in now?
We're ready. Oh, actually, I'll add one more note is that my kids as well absolutely adored this film. They were junior high, and this was one of those films that a bunch of 13-year-olds would all gather in the basement to watch together. Totally. Because and for those that didn't know the big twist, what happens, the reveal in the house, which, obviously is the family living deeper in the basement of the house we're going to be talking about. And so that was it was a cultural phenomenon, I think, around young people too. Like it was beloved by not just like the aesthetes, if you will, of film culture in the United States, and saying, "Oh, this Korean film, you should." I think it was a truly a pop culture phenomenon.
Yeah.
Which very unusual, I think, for a foreign film, generally speaking. I mean, it happens, um, but it was the first, and it still is the only non-English speaking film to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. It also won Best Screenplay. It won Best Director, pitted against like Martin Scorsese in that scene.
Tarantino for Once
Norm
Upon a Time in
Tarantino.
Hollywood, which was
Yeah,
my favorite movie of that year. Like there
yeah,
was some real competition, and
real heavy hitters.
he deservedly won it. I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I could see this
Yeah,
winning out. Sure.
yeah, yeah. And there's a couple tidbits that were interesting. Bong Joon-ho talked about in the Wikipedia page that he had actually been a tutor for a rich family himself, tutoring English. And we're going to talk a lot about how English and Americanized culture, the wealth of Korea, the wealthy Koreans' connection to American culture, and how that's kind of interesting, and they see eliteness in that. Which now you'd be like, are you sure about that? Is that a good idea?
I have a funny quick story. Can I tell it?
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
So my son is now deep into like BitTorrent and Plex and creating his own network and stuff.
Uh
So
huh.
he's like,
Uh huh.
we usually have a way of watching these films and you sharing them, but he gave me this film. He's like, Dad, I already have it. Watch it on my
Okay.
network Plex. I'm like, okay. I'm watching it and I'm like, wow, every third word is English. And I was like, I
Uh
don't
huh.
remember this of the original. And I'm like, wow, I have a whole new like theory from Michael Branson Smith that I'm going to bring to our podcast because I didn't ever bring as much as you. And I'm like, I have an idea that not only is it an invasion of a family, it's an invasion of the English language. And Tommy
Yeah.
was like, you're so full of it. But I was like, I have it. He's like, are you watching the one I gave you? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, Dad, that's in Hindi. That's why there's all I'm like, what? It's not Korean. He's like, no, it's in Hindi. You got to change the language. I'm like, oh, Jesus. So anyway, funny
Oh, he's
story about
downloaded
language.
some. He's downloading those Blu-ray copies with all the languages still available, huh?
He is. He's deep in
He's
in
getting
the
good at.
woods there.
Oh, that's good.
I am a
I'm
very
proud.
proud
I'm
father in that
I'm
regard.
very proud. Very proud copyright infringer.
Oh, my son, he's a great torrent freak. Let me tell you.
um, so yeah, I mean, he talked about having done this job, and he always wondered what it'd be like if he could get all his friends to infiltrate the house of this wealthy family, because he described it as really weird. And this weirdness of the stratification of those with and without is very important, right? And the way that those without are able to enter these spaces as workers primarily, but when you're not too, and you enter these spaces, and they are in a weird way wondrous. Like I've
God, yeah.
had this opportunity through my wife's work brings her in contact with really wealthy people as donors to organizations that she's worked for, and you enter these spaces, and they're literally, they're otherworldly, right? They're like pieces of history, they're museum pieces, they're art pieces, and you should be so lucky to be able to just inhabit them, however briefly you do. And that's, I think, a big part of this story too.
Did you see the Netflix documentary Being Eddie?
No, I haven't seen
Okay,
that.
it's Eddie. It's about Eddie Murphy, and I have my
Okay.
problems with it. But part of the documentary is all about Eddie Murphy's house. And
Okay.
so he has this house which is built around a courtyard, almost like this Italianate old school. And on
Yeah.
top of it, he has like a glass ceiling that opens and closes almost like one of those baseball fields.
Yeah.
I was like, what is going
Yeah.
on?
Lifestyles of the rich and famous.
Exactly. Put me back to the 80s.
Yeah. I'm sure it was built like in the 80s and 90s and updated furiously. Um, So, I mean, last one that was kind of stood out to me just because it's silly is like the editor of this film edited it on Final Cut Pro, a version from 2011. And those that are Apple junkies like myself and were in film and video editing, this was a beloved piece of software that was fucked up royally by Apple when they converted it to OS X and version X. And it's interesting because even in the film industry at the time, like Final Cut Pro 7 up back then was being edited in like, X-Men's Origins, No Country for Old Men was edited on Final Cut
Crazy.
Pro in 2007. The Zodiac or Supersize Me, Napoleon Dynamite. And then you go into everything post Final Cut Pro X, and it's just a bunch of red stubs in Reddit, like mostly a bunch of no-name movies. And so Jim and I were joking prior to the start. It's like we're both in a Wikipedia article by name, but neither of us are even red stubs, and we're happily not red stubs. We don't need someone to need to write about us. We're never going to pass the notability test, Jim. Never.
No, we're stubless and proud.
Yes. So, all right, let's get into the film now. Those are our silly little production notes. And Bong Joon-ho, this is his like magnum opus, according to those that write about movies and stuff. So why is that?
Why is it his magnum opus?
Just why do people think of it as that? Why is this? What about this film are people so attached to? And obviously, we're going to get into the familial aspects of it all too.
Well, I think one of the things that's really, and you pointed to it earlier, and I think you're right on, is the film is brilliant in that it's comic, irreverent, super serious, right? It hits on so many registers at once, but it also seems very timely. Like, as an American who has spent no time in Korea and no time in Seoul, like, I have no idea what's going on there, but it looks pretty bad. And I'm sure America looks just as bad or maybe good based on the movies you would see. And that's one of the things that struck me immediately about this movie is, as we're going to talk about, this movie centers really around a house. You've already brought it up. It's this gorgeous modernist space. And when you think about movies, particularly like, say, the Will Ferrell movies and some of the kind of comedies, or like, it always kind of focuses on a house, but it's a house that's super swanky and super nice and everything's perfect, but they're just supposed to be a normal family. There's no sense of class. There's no sense of struggle. It's just basically like everyone in America must have a super beautiful house. And everyone, and I love that this film is about just the opposite of that. You start this film, to start at the beginning, in a sub-basement, with
the
a
semi-basement.
with a family who ultimately
Banjiha.
who are looking for Wi-Fi because
Right.
and I heard a story from you about getting free Wi-Fi for years.
For a year and a half, yeah.
Made me think of you. But then also, their job, they finally got lucky enough to get a job, which is folding pizza boxes as fast as they possibly can for no pay. And it's like, you really open up in a dystopian world.
Yeah, and this is the Kim family, and the patriarch is Ki-taek, the mother is Chun-suk, and then we have Ki-woo and Ki-young, the boy and daughter. And what's going to be interesting is we have a parallel wealthy family that is also a husband, a wife, a daughter, and a son, and their plight is felt so clearly. The Kim's plight, they're very subsistence living. They're willing to endure being sprayed with pesticides, basically,
to get
in
rid
order
of the
to
stink
deal
bugs.
to get rid of the stink bug that's in their apartment, which is known as a bun. I don't know if Wikipedia was right about this. They called it a banjiha, or a semi-basement apartment, where you have basically a window that's at
Eye level, right?
floor level, eye level to the street. It's street level, right? You get basically about, picture like you get about 1.5 feet above the street, and that's your window out. That's it. The rest is below ground as a result. And their existence is looking for work or sleeping or eating. and just staring out that window and of all the like travesties around them, the drunken men pissing in front of them and the fights and stuff like that happen in this neighborhood of depressed individuals, economically depressed individuals. And so, what's so interesting is they're able to see their opportunities very quickly when Kiwoo's friend, who what's his name again? It's Min Hyuk, who's a university student, and obviously they equate not unlike many cultures equate education with status and wealth, right? And even though at some point, the father Ki-tek talks about like there's even 500, university graduates lining up for what is the job? Was it? It's like
I remember.
job is
Hold on.
yeah, it's a job working for
A security guard.
a security guard, yeah, which sounds about right. That sounds like about the existence of our 90s, like the slacker culture we were defined as. Like you're just like doing random jobs at Quickie Mart stores and something, like trying to figure out how to actually get a job someday, right, and start a career, and similarly in this much more economically depressed time, I think, in the wealth disparity is much larger. But we were in that era of burgeoning, I think, wealth disparity, which the first film, I think, was really positive about wealth in Fatal Attraction. We were part of that era of like, look at this burgeoning wealth disparity. But this one is like, no, it's deep, entrenched wealth disparity, almost 40 years later, right?
It's the other side of it, right? And I think that's also part of why it appeals to another generation is how it deals and how it portrays wealth, which is, I was trying to say through the house, but like, how many movies that we've talked about when we've talked about family on these 63, 64 episodes that we've done have dealt with the 63. There is a 64th, but we won't talk about it. But how many deal with kind of completely abject families like this?
Yeah.
Like none.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's not an American
many.
thing.
I mean, no, well, I think what is it? The Down and Out in Beverly Hills,
Slums
is
of Beverly Hills. God
Slum
damn it, Michael! Don't make that mistake again.
Yeah, Down and Out in Beverly Hills.
God, this is the 4th time I've corrected you. Don't do it again.
I'm consistent, at least, right?
Don't do it again.
Down and Out in Beverly Hills.
It's not.
Slums of Beverly Hills. All right. But what was great is like that was this wonderful portrait of like a very real family, and it was of course, not unsurprisingly, that film was based on true life, and that these are these kind of.
But it wasn't even a slum. It was kind of like
it was like homelessness
apartment.
of a. Yeah, but it was a middling apartment. It was transience, right? The idea, lack of stability. And a big part of this story is... No, I think they were making a move for a job, right? Yeah. She was very stable ultimately, just not wealthy. And those were the classic, like John Hughes styled stories, like pitting the wealthy kids versus the lower middle class kids that technically lived in relative stability compared to these kind of stories where opportunities for education have passed. What's the job? You kind of folding pizza boxes is your job. And then you're immediately told you're doing it wrong, even though you watched this video and endured it while pesticides are swirling around you at the same time.
And they're going to dock your pay.
And they're going to dock your pay.
It's a brutal capitalistic world for sure. Right.
And so what's interesting is this, it made me think of, so we're introduced to the friend. I've already mentioned him, Min Hyuk, who pitches to Ki-woo. It's like, hey, I'm going to study abroad. You were smart. And they both basically knew each other from conscription. They both were, there's conscription. You're to be in the military in South Korea unless you can get out of it through wealth and other exceptions. And so that's how they both were in the army together, even though they're from different parts of society ultimately. And it's like, you're smart, you can pull this off. But the rationale that he's pitching it, which is interesting, the reason he's giving this opportunity to Ki-woo is like, because he is lower class, right? He doesn't want to give it to his frat boy friends because they'll hit on the girl he likes.
Exactly.
Right?
He's using him. So it's kind of like a placeholder,
Correct. Yeah. It's like, you won't try to do any of that, right?
Exactly. And she wouldn't like you if she really knew, or what. It's really, yeah, there's so much
Right.
implied there.
Right. And this is one of the points that is a big part of this idea of it's a classic con, not unlike the sting and performing in front of wealthy people. And but it's a very 21st century version. It reminded me of like the Anna Delvey story, like the pretend daughter of a Russian oligarch who's actually from a poor family in Russia, who convinces banks to give her money and try to start this art club in New York City, but eventually finally gets caught. And this is the era of the con right now. This is the way up. The only way to this is kind of one of the stories that the internet and the media tells us today is the way to succeed, to make the bridge from quote unquote lower class to that elite upper class is you got to con your way in.
Yeah.
It's the only way to do it, whether it's through your social media brand or whatever kind of slick thing you're hustling with your appearance, and AI is going to make that even easier now, right?
And Netflix is kind of like your, instructional videos for how to do that, because they love those
Exactly.
videos. And my son, my oldest, is like, I can't believe it. He's fascinated, and I think part of him wants to do
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Because this is this portrait of how to succeed without having to work that hard,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
You know, and so this is part of this bigger story of wealth and interpretation. This is one of the ones, and this is again back to kind of the worlds that my wife navigates sometimes as part of her work is, and how she's described to me engaging wealthy people and just telling them exactly everything they want to hear, and then they think you're the most intriguing person in response because you find them compelling. And so they kind of, you be this reflection of their idea of themselves, and that's how you succeed. And that's a big part of this story of how the Kims succeed in infiltrating the Park family, is it not?
No, I think that's a really good reading. And I will say, to the defense of the rich, I like that too. I tell Antonella all the time, don't tell me the truth, lie to me. Like, just tell me what I want to hear. And I believe that's one way to live life. And so I know we could talk shit on them, the rich, for liking that, but I see the value of that, I'll just say, to their defense.
You want to be told that your children are brilliant, don't you, Jim?
Absolutely.
That work that your son's doing in his art, that little schizophrenia zone in the lower right hand corner.
It's great. Tell me.
Let me be his tutor. I'll help you open that black box of his mind.
Oh, and
Will you do that with me?
I will, absolutely, for a fee, because this is high now. This is high end art therapy.
I will be charging a lot. Yeah, I mean, I've got skills.
Wonderful. She was the best, actually.
Oh, the Jessica, Ki Young, who's played by Park Sodam. Yeah, she's remarkable, and it's interesting because within the story, not only do we as viewers see her as being really capable at this, her brother even sees her as like she fits in his mind into this role. Like when they actually finally infiltrate the house, and she's taking a bath, and she's like, oh, you look like you belong there. Like, it's like you're the only one of the family that really probably should be in this situation. We're just a bunch of hangers on. You're the one with the Photoshop skills, all the good plans, and the planning. It becomes a big part of that. And one of the favorite early scenes is like the documents you have. Ki Young in the what is it, the internet cafe or the gaming cafe?
Gaming cafe, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And she's on Photoshop making his fake university documents, and her father is so proud. Kai Tek's like, oh, if there was an Oxford degree in forgery.
And it's interesting too, I mean, that you bring her up, because obviously that's one of the first times we see her skills, when she's forging a document. And then there's someone who comes over while she's doing it, like, you're not allowed to smoke here. And she's like, yeah, give me that cup. And she uses it as an ashtray. Doesn't stop. And there's something about the daughter, and you say it later on, like when the son, when her brother says, it seems like you belong here, the way you were in the tub. And she's like, she's kind of like, whatever, I don't even know what you're talking about. But then she goes on to say, when I was working at Bridal parties being paid.
Oh, right.
I was the one who caught the bouquet for an extra $10. And she's like, I didn't even know that bitch. And like there's something about her, and I wonder if
Hmm.
this why she seems like she fits in is in order to fit in and in order to do that, kind of climbing that we're talking about, with the Russian oligarch or whatever, there has to be, I think, a certain amount of cutthroatness, right? Like she was like,
Absolutely.
we have to worry about our family. We don't have to
Yeah, don't worry
worry about.
about the drive about Yoon. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
And so she was the
Yeah.
only one, maybe the mother too, who shows that sense of cutthroatness. Maybe the mother not as much, but the sister
No.
does in a very powerful way. She's a great
Hmm.
character.
Yeah, and so there is all this. So I mean, we're kind of we're not going to. The plot doesn't always
No.
matter, but the idea is
It's going to be
that
hard to
you know
cover it all in this for
Kiwoo,
sure.
yeah, Kiwoo gets into the Park family posing as an English um, tutor to Dahae, the older daughter, and then Ki Young becomes the art therapy instructor for for Da Song, the boy who's very eccentric and is very into Indian culture. And then eventually they strategize to even get Kai Tek as the driver taking over for Young, but it's really through the daughter, Da Song, who leaves her underwear in his car, you know. And this is going to lead into another conversation, which is the title for this episode about crossing lines and the language that particularly Mr. Park uses, Dong-ik, to describe stratification and how important that is. But the most sophisticated con is the way that they have to get rid of the old housekeeper, Moon Guang, who's been there with the original owner. And this is and they use this really sophisticated. They figure out that she's allergic to peaches, and then they basically, you know, put peach fuzz on her hair to make her have an allergy attack, which they pretend is TB, and it's successful, and she gets fired. And so the entire family is now infiltrated because Jung Suk is now the housekeeper. So
Yeah.
housekeeper, driver, art therapy teacher, and English teacher are all healthily enjoying the wealth of the Park family. Never mind that they took out two working class people, and Young, the driver, and Moon Guang, the housekeeper.
Yeah. And I think the first half of this film is that, it's
Yeah,
really like them, strategic. And it's great because you
yeah,
believe it. This could be very contrived, but each one
no,
is believable, and the daughter really sells it. Like when she comes
she
in
does.
and as the art therapist, she sells it. And then they're like, how did you sell it? And to your point, she says she went to school in Illinois, and
Yeah.
that whole American connection was immediately like,
Hmm.
oh, that must be, to the rich in terms of that con. That
Yeah.
was kind of a turn on for them. Like that was a symbol or a signal that this is someone who can be trusted because they have these, you know, not only credentials, but they've been to America and they've done that. The other thing on top of that, which I thought was interesting, is when the original guy who gave the son of the parasitic family the job comes, they say to him about him, he has so much vigor. And
Yeah.
it was this idea of vigor that he's wealthy, he comes from a wealthy family. But wealth isn't necessarily something you always see on a bank account or a statement or whatever. For them, it's a way in which you hold yourself, in which
Correct.
you kind of almost exude life. And I love
Yep.
that because it comes up again and again throughout the movie as
Sure.
this sense of vigor.
Yeah. Yeah. He when Kiwoo becomes Kevin right after he's
Yeah.
hired, and that's another thing. It's like both Kiwoo and Ki Young are given other names that are American names like Kevin and Jessica, and the idea is his first test is with young Joe, the mother of the Park family mother, and she says, like, if you're not up to Min's level, I don't see the point. And he knows this. He knows it's not a test of whether he's actually good at teaching English. It's this projecting image. And the way he does it is he grabs Dahe's arm and feels her pulse, probably not really even feeling it, and says, "Your heart is racing. Why? You need to dominate this test. You need to show vigor." And like you said,
Yeah,
and it's this idea of it's a posture, right? It's like how you just show yourself as confident and capable. That's all they care about. It's a presentation more than anything. And the way that Da Song talks about the painting is one of my favorite stuff. Like I'm sorry, the way that Ki Young talks about Da Song's paintings, the boys' paintings, is just great because they're just like ridiculous paintings, right? They're drawings that are like supposed to be brilliant, and this notion of like, oh, this lower region is known as the schizophrenia zone, which I had mocked about you and your son's artwork, which is it's just crazy. And so it's like they want to believe their son's brilliant, so they contrive his brilliance, right? And if you think about the certain amount of art, is that kind of a con, is it not? Right?
absolutely. I mean, I
You know?
agree that most art that gets popular is you've
Yeah.
conned the public to think that this is great, and then we
Yep.
can argue about why. But the great line there is like, art is a black box. Are you ready to
Yeah.
join with me to like, basically unpack it? It's like she had so many great lines and she was so
Yeah.
convincing. But you're
Right.
right. Like the way in which they convinced them was a real sense of like not only conviction and confidence, but a sense of almost aggressiveness. And I
Yeah.
think that was like, you could see because they described from early on,
Mm.
Kevin's friend who's giving him the tutoring job
Yeah.
describes the mom as he's like, how do I best describe her? And I don't know how it, you know, I only saw this in Hindi, so I don't know how this translates in Korean or English, but they described it as simple. She's a
Yeah.
simple woman. And I thought that was interesting because the
Mhm.
mother is kind of a weird character.
Young and simple, yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah, her naps are brilliant, like, there's just there's when Chung Suk, like, tries to wake her up, from not Chung Suk, sorry, Moon Gwang, is she's in the yard, and she's clearly, like, an afternoon drinker, right? She's like, this is another conversation about, like, the idle wealthy, right? In a sense, like, she has nothing to do, so
Totally.
she's manufacturing something to do, but eventually she just like falls asleep, right? On more than one occasion.
It is
Like
so
her
funny.
husband comes home and she's napping on the couch and she snaps to, like, to pretend like she was busy and had things to do, you know?
And absolutely, yes, you nailed that. And the thing is that they don't make them unsympathetic, nor do they make them
No.
caricatures, but it's still funny. And I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
how this film balances that so well between both families. It's really
Yeah.
well done.
Yeah, more than one occasion, Mr. Park comes across as a good dad. The way he is willing to engage his son with the walkie-talkies and his like, quirkiness. So you're totally right. But I think the Mr. Park or Dong Geek's character, I think his most interesting trait is his desire and need to talk about stratification, right?
Yeah.
And he talks about it again and again about the idea of the help crossing lines. And the first one comes up when he finds the underwear in the back seat. And he brings this up with his wife, and he's like, don't we pay him well? Like, why would he, shouldn't he have enough money to not need to have sex in our car? And he talks about like, why does he cross this line? And then he literally talks about the line. It's like, why did he have to have sex in my seat? He could have at least just had it in the front seat where he drives, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's like there's a literal line crossed here. And then it's really funny because it's like he's concerned. It's like, how does someone leave their panties? That seems really hard. And then suddenly it's like, well, maybe they're all on drugs, and they're like, oh, drugs. It's like cocaine. Oh my, white powder.
Methamphetamine. But okay, can I jump here because I know I'm being
Yeah,
very
yeah,
unpredictable with my interlocutions. But so there's another scene later on when they're
yeah,
on the couch together, and he's like, I really would
yeah.
love it if you'd wear those cheap panties. And she's like, really? And he's like, it would turn me on. And then she's like, if I do, will you buy me drugs?
Exactly. They're role playing. They're role playing
They're
people being like,
slumming, right?
yeah, in their role play. Totally. That's their titillating moment,
I
right? It's
love
like they're,
that.
yeah, it's so good. And so, onward he goes with this idea, in his interview of Mr. Kim. It's like, it's not an interview with my open cup of coffee, making sure that as you drive me for the first time, if I spill this, you're going to be fired, which would be impossible I mean, like, even with the best suspension on a planet, like with like monster truck kind of suspension, there's no way you're not like hitting a bump that doesn't jostle a cup of coffee. But he compliments him in a couple ways. First, which are their veiled, like, know your place compliments. Oh, I really appreciate a man who's been in his field, having driven for 30 years, which is lie, but it doesn't matter. It's like, oh, I so appreciate that you stuck with your line of work, like your field, like driving is a field, like it's a career, but it's not. And he later talks about, oh, that Mr. Kim, he's so great how he almost seems to, but he never quite crosses the line,
Yeah.
right?
And he doesn't cross the line. And, that for him is a great thing. But there is something that does cross the line about
Yeah.
him,
Yep. Oh, about the whole family
about the
ultimately,
whole
right?
family. Totally.
And it's Dahae who figures it out first, isn't it? The little boy, the precocious boy. He goes up to Mr. Kim and goes, and then he goes up to Chung Suk, who's now the housekeeper, and goes, they smell the same. They smell like Jessica. And they're like, and it's the idea of the smell associated with people that are beneath them.
Yeah.
The smell crosses the line, right?
Yeah. And that's a big part of this movie, right? Like,
Yeah.
smell be the thing, but like their idea that there is something indeterminate in some ways, like a smell, that
Right.
defines that stratification. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting that they use smell, right? Because smell, in particular, for a filmic audience, is not something you can experience,
No,
right?
you're right.
So, like, they completely create this invisible barrier, which a lot of this stuff
Yeah.
is, and try and communicate it to you. And yet, that's almost at the end, the straw that breaks the camel's back is something that no one can see or understand in this particular medium, which I think is so fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you boil a rag, Jim, and you made me, stick my face in that boiling steam and smell it.
Maybe this was a
Um,
good 50s. Like, this would be a great kind of gimmick for this movie, is to bring it back with like smellorama,
yeah.
odorama. And like anytime they came in, you would put the smell in the theater.
So, along with the shaky seats that move you around, and there's a little bit of mist too that comes at you. This is a
I
very
love
Disney
that.
theme. That's what you get. Let's put a Disney park theme. It's like, let's experience poor life. These are like those like ideas of imagining what was the film where you get to jack into someone else's brain and record their experiences, and so you get to relive them. Oh, it was a great science fiction
Giant
film.
mnemonic?
No, not Johnny Mnemonic. He's just carrying data in his head. This is a film where your experiences are recorded, like, so it's classic, like you record someone's experience while they're having sex, and then you get to experience their point of view, right? And then it's a murder mystery ultimately, and it's like a snuff film, but you experience the snuff film rather than actually just watch it,
I
right?
feel like I should know this. Anyway,
You would. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. My brain and recall is pathetic. So we are on to kind of where it's important to kind of drift into, or sledgehammer our way into, the real twist of this film. And what's so wonderful is, like, you're not expecting this at all. And so what's so wonderful is the Park family has gone on a camping trip, and the Kim family is like, yes, we get the house to ourselves, and they kind of party it up, like, only Chung Suk really is supposed to be staying there. The housekeeper is like a live-in help person. Everybody else is there to tutor, or there to teach art therapy, there to drive, and if they're away, there's no driving to be done. But they take over the house, and man, they have a great little party, don't they?
they do. Yeah. They go for it. And this is the one time in the movie, I think, where you begin to see like, oh, there's some deep animosity between the, the Park family, between the mother and father. Like they really
Oh yeah,
resent each other, and that's what makes
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
mess in the living room, because he takes all of the alcohol that's on the table where they're partying, throws it on the table, and they're having this fight, about her saying to him, I forget what exactly they were
It's
arguing.
basically about it's basically about like if Mr. Park showed up, you crawl away like a
A cockroach,
cockroach
exactly,
because because they're all in the midst of fantasizing what it would be like to own the house. Because
exactly.
Kim Ki Woo is like saying, "Well, I'm kind of dating Da Hae, and I'm gonna once she goes to university." And he's literally parroting a line from his friend um, Min Hook, who had given him the job in the first place. Like, I'm going to, you know, ask her out officially once she starts university. And his father, Kitek is like, "Oh, this is great. This will be your house. We'll be like family in laws," and everybody's fantasizing. And it's only Ki Young who's like, "This is bullshit" right off the bat. And she's like, "There's no way. Once that happens, I'll pretend to fantasize which room is mine." But Key Tech plays along, but Chung Suk totally tackles him and says like, "You crawl away by a cockroach," and that's when he gets violent,
Yeah,
right?
it does, because obviously attacking his status. Because there's throughout the movie, he's trying to be a father figure. There's a point when they go out and they eat at this driver's luncheon, and he's like, "Eat as much
Yeah,
as you want, kids. Do this, do this." And the mother says, "They bought it. Of course they're going to eat as much as they want." But he's still trying to act the father and act the
right,
provider.
yeah,
And she really attacks that sense of him being a provider and some sort of strong, vigorous man. And so he takes all of that stuff and throws. And there's a moment, even for the kids, where they're like, whoa, you could say a lot about this poor family. But one of the things from day one is they're on the same page. They work as
yeah,
a unit. They're tight.
right,
And
yeah,
this was the moment where you're like, oh wait, there's, there something's rotten in Denmark here. But then
yeah,
it turns out to be a joke, and the mom and dad laugh. But there was like strange moment, and I don't know
yeah. And
exactly what it was signifying, but for me, it was an interesting
no,
moment.
it was. He's playing with like, are they kidding or not kidding? Kidding, not kidding, real, not real. And it's definitely a moment, because you're right. I love one of my earlier scenes, just to back up for a second, like the idea of how they're so in sync up to this point is like as part of prepping for the ultimate con to get rid of um Moon Guang, the housekeeper, which they know is going to be difficult. You have Ki Tek, the father, practicing his lines, and it's
Yeah,
going between him practicing his lines with Ki Woo and just saying his lines as he actually does to Young Jo, the Mrs. Kim, if you will, and it's wonderful. You're like, yeah, yeah, Dad, you're getting it now. You got it right. They're really into his role playing and figuring it out and how to perform their lines. And that's how sophisticated the con is. And everybody's on the same page and in on it until the fired Moon Guang shows up during a rainstorm that they happen to be partying.
and this wasn't part of the narrative. They even say it like this wasn't part
Yeah.
of the narrative.
No. And this is where she, cajoles her way in. "Oh, I forgot something in the basement." Literally, something is something. and and so she lets her in. Everybody's hiding except for Jung Suk, and she goes into the basement, and Jung Suk's sitting there, and they're like, "What do you think she's doing down there?" And they're all just going like, I don't know. And finally, Jung Suk's go there, and there's this incredible moment, and you're just like, "What the fuck is going on?" Where you see Moon Guang is got her body perched against a wall and pushing on like a giant armoire, trying to push it out of the way.
Yeah, and she's totally like vertical, or how would you say that?
Totally.
Horizontal, right?
Horizontal.
Yeah,
Yeah. Her body is horizontal
and it's a
between
great
the
shot.
wall and the arm and this giant like you know uh
It,
cabinet buffet with all these like uh plant bottled and
peaches, I don't know.
preserved,
Yeah,
yeah, preserved, yeah, it is. It's
prunes, I think it's something.
preserves,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I mean, it's almost like she's trying to push rock. You're like, what is
yeah.
going on? Turns out there's something stuck underneath the shelving, which prevents it from opening, and the mother comes, the mom Kim comes, pulls it out. She falls dramatically on her face, but then it
Yeah.
opens up a whole nother level to this house.
Yeah, there's a door, and this door goes deep, deep, deep. Like it's literally like 2 stories deeper below the basement. And it's very on the head, like this idea of stratification. Like there's the top of the house, classic upstairs, downstairs, like Victorian culture, right? You have the work that lives below and the wealth that they support above. But this is really deep, and it's a bomb shelter basically that's unknown to the Kim family. I mean, the Park family. They don't even know it exists. And as as Chung Suk follows her down, she discovers Moon Yan's husband's living down there, and you're just like, "Holy, no
Yeah, like
way!"
what
kind
is
of.
going on? And so
Yeah,
not only is it a bomb shelter, and they reference North Korea several times in throughout the
yeah,
movie and that, but it's also a place to hide from debtors. So
yeah,
debtors, which seem very shark-like, I guess in Korea, just like in America, are
yeah,
basically like feared to the point where you'd build a bunker to hide
yeah,
from them.
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it was so weird that reference. It's like because it's like, or to hide from debtors, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah,
I
it's like
understand. They're like,
bombing or debtors. And then you start to think like, the whole rich also, as we kind of figure out, are hiding, or could be hiding when the revolution comes and when the poor people
yeah,
figure out, although they never will, hey,
off with her head.
yeah, off with your head. So like that whole, and that's something like you hear about now with the rich people in the
Yeah,
US, all these tech people like, yeah, are you building a bomb
yeah. What?
shelter? Are you building a
No, they're
shelter?
what? It's no. They're all building. What's the country where they're all like building these like compounds
Yeah,
in New Zealand, I think it is, or something like that, or somewhere in the South Pacific, like a bunch of island nations, and it's like you need your getaway compound that's outside of the country when the zombies finally attack. You know what I mean? That
exactly.
kind of bullshit, right? Yeah, it's not unlike that. And what's interesting is it's like this is the despair is this is the beginning of this idea of because is part of this projecting of posture. This is the first time I've thought of it this way, even before not in the notes, that those up and comers are supposed to project in order to inhabit the spaces of the wealthy. That creates a situation where they feel like they have to fight, right?
Yeah.
Those without, like, there's so little room for us in this opportunistic culture we're living in that you have to take what's yours and never mind that who you step on. Immediately the both, marginalized families are fighting one another as a result, because what happens so quickly at first, you have Moon Gwang like saying, oh, just let him live here, let him stay here, I'll give you money every week. And then before you know it, the rest of the Kim family tumbles out into view, and Moon Gwang is quick to record it on her family, and she has the upper hand. And there's this wonderful quote where what is the quote from her husband, describing the phone is like
Yeah, the send button is like a Korean missile, right? Like a North
yeah, it's
Korean
like the
missile.
send button is like a missile launcher,
Yeah.
yeah. And we also get their fantasy, because once they have the upper hand and they're like have the Kim family in the corner literally with their arms up in the air pretending like they're under arrest, right?
Yeah.
And they're talking about how you guys don't even know how to respect the house. It was by this famed architect and you didn't enjoy its beauty the way we knew how to enjoy its beauty. It's like, you guys are charlatans, you're a scumbag family, as they describe them. And they reflect on their fantasy of being in the house alone, and that liminal moment between when it'd been sold by the architect and before the Park family had come into it. And so this is where the house starts to really start to loom as this object of desire, right? As this space that's literally, it's like the castle in the clouds or something like that,
Yeah.
you know?
Totally. And I love that the house, like, it's always that throughout the movie
Yeah.
at every
Yeah.
major point. And I love that they're kind of, rather than in the US where it's just assume that background and everyone can afford a house like this and that, like,
Yeah.
this house gets deep into, like you said, these things as objects of desire, which
Yeah.
create this stratification, which create this
Hmm.
violence. And this is
Yeah.
actually the basis of the violence. And
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating just how much this movie pounds on it. I love that.
Yeah. Even visually, one of the things I noticed, like I called it the castle throughout my notes because in the opening scene when Kiwoo is going and he's like pushing on the little like security thing to talk, the presentation of he's basically sitting outside a wall, like a stone wall in an empty street. And it's like he's in the moat. He's trying to
Yeah.
he's trying to cross the moat and enter the walls of the castle and the courtyard. Literally, and it has this beautiful courtyard. It has this beautiful backyard. It has these big open windows, and which is amazing to hear later on that everything beyond the trees was CGI in the creation, and everything above the first floor was CGI as well. But the idea is that it is this space that we all fantasize about, these beautiful spaces, the Airbnbs. Wouldn't you love to be
Yeah.
in this space for just a weekend? Wow, it's amazing. And the looks, the overlooks, the mountains, the views, and the escape from the drudgery of society, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because obviously you start in the sub basement where they
Hmm.
are, or the semi basement. And then as he's walking there, you realize there's these like 10, 15-foot retainer walls. And
Yeah.
he's in these canals and he's looking up. And it does, like as soon as you walk into the rich neighborhood, you get the ivy on the wall, but there's walls everywhere, right? To your
Yep.
point, they are like compounds.
Yeah. Yeah, and the idea is that also it's like the dream house literally contains buried poverty beneath it, right? It's like these are, and it's that classic like capitalism is built off of the labor hitting hidden and suffering below it. And so,
I mean,
that's
that's
the Marxist
Metropolis,
perspective
right?
ultimately. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's like this is like an updated Metropolis.
Exactly. Oh, and there's so many. It made me think of I read this like teen literature book, Red Rising, which is like a piece of science fiction. It's the same, but it happens on Mars, and there's the miners that are toiling below for those that never see daylight, and then for the wealthy Goldens that live above on the surface, and they're perfect looking because they can like be manipulated genetically to be beautiful human beings, and yeah, I mean, there's so much about that, and then what's interesting is how it all comes apart for everybody as the camping vacation falls apart quickly because it's a rainstorm and they're like, coming home, make us some soup, Chung Suk. We need to eat as soon as we get home. 8 minutes, boil the water now. Do it, do it, do it. And there's a fight over the phone, and basically the Kim family gets the upper hand. And literally, this is probably one of the most jarring moments is when Chung Suk literally as Moon Gwang is trying to escape, they're trying to literally shove them back down into the dungeon, if you will call it that, right? The lower basement of the fantasy house. She's almost made it back because they've smothered her with peach dust to try to subdue her, which is really fucked up.
It totally is.
Who goes into anaphylactic shock from peach
And they're
dust, you
always
know?
going by it and they're kind of sprinkling it with their hands
Oh
as they
my
walk
god,
by.
yeah.
It's so great.
Yeah, and so she's, Moon Guang is like trying to make it back up as the Park family is back in the house now, and Kyung Suk sees her about to appear in the kitchen, and she just like kicks her down the stairs and
It's so
almost breaks
great.
her neck, but gives her a concussion, which ultimately kills her.
Yeah.
Right later in the film, it ultimately kills her, which drives her husband Young Se crazy. Right, and even though he's being subdued by the father Kai Tek, the Mr. Kim. And there's an interestingness to this kind of as we're coming to the finale of this discourse between these, those with have not trying to kill each other to try to hold on to their limited hold of you know financial stability. And one of the other things too is when Moon Guang first shows up, her face is all beaten up too. Like, and
Yeah.
there's no explanation for it. Like she's without. She says to the Kim family plainly, it's like, I have no savings, I have no house. I'm on the streets again, right? Like she's lost everything since she's been fired, and she's been literally beaten as a result of this. And so that's why they're fighting so vigorously for their space.
And also the
You know,
husband is down there because of debting. I mean, he had a very
yeah,
similar situation to the Kim father,
Right. They had a failed cake
a failed
business.
cake business, right?
Yeah.
And so his
Yeah. They were trying
debtors,
to make it. And the way he tried to build it through debt money rather than a real bank, and yeah, subsistence living, and they would kill him, right?
exactly. Yeah, and so I mean, I love that whole kind of that sensibility of how, I mean, I don't, it probably is exaggerated. I don't know. Again, my relationship to Korea, but if you think about debtors in America, and you think about like some of those calls I got when I was deep in graduate school, and I'm telling you, I've gotten a few people who were just
Oh
fucking
yeah.
nasty. They were like,
I'll call
there
her
was
on
a
the phone.
woman once who called me and she was so nasty. I was like, what is going on here? Like, I
Wow.
owe you like $110 and you're like ready to go after me. Like, it was crazy. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah. And so this comes to, so as everybody is like literally hiding from the Park family, and like Kiwoo is upstairs under Dahe's bed, Ki Young is under the coffee table, Kyung Suk is hiding in plain sight because she's the housekeeper, and Kai Tak, Mr. Kim, is basically trying to subdue, Moon Gwang and her husband down in the sub basement. And there's this really interesting conversation because this is the beginning of like the defining description of the plight of living down there, where Gyung Se, who's the husband of former housekeeper Moon Gwang, he's saying like, just let me stay here. I'm used to the basement. This is fine. I'm fine. I understand basement living. And this is something that Kitek, like after they finally escape, and they've subdued, and it all seems like kind of like it's okay. They're going to be okay. And then they try to drift home, and there's this massive deluge that turns into a flood because they show them descending. It's like something like out of Dante, where they're just descending level after level after level, lower and lower and deeper into the dredges of the worst parts of like society in terms of resources. And it's flooding and it's sewage water and it's utterly disgusting, the scene, like their toilet. And then you realize why their toilet early in the scene, you're like, why the fuck is their toilet up on a platform? And it's because it would overflow
yeah.
because it's below the water line otherwise, right? And so their toilet is exploding shit and piss, and they're all just trying to gather their meager belongings that are left. And in the same time, this is intercut with basically Moon Gwang and Gai Se just like basically dying, where Moon Gwang is dying and Gai Se is like just trying to escape his bonds. And it's a tragedy for these two families. And then the aftermath is they're all stuck in this gym, the Kim family, because with all the other poor people. And there's this really sad description of like where Kiwoo's like, okay, so what's the plan? How are we going to deal with, the housekeeper and her husband? And he's like, no plans. We're like, basically, he talks about being the basement, and he gives this monologue about, you know, what plan never fails? No plan. If
Yeah.
you make a plan, life never works out that way. That's why people should never make plans. With no plan, nothing can go wrong. And if something spins out of control, it doesn't matter whether you kill someone or betray your country. None of it fucking matters. And he's like, got it. And that's like this real nihilistic perspective of like, this is what we are. We're the dregs. There's nothing. There's no getting out of this whatsoever.
Yeah. It's a dark one. And they're sitting in obviously, a gym with a whole, like hundreds of other people. And, the next scene is the mother from the rich family wants to
Yeah.
create an impromptu birthday party for their son and wants it to be a day party. And part of why she wants it to be a day party is that they can drink during the day. And she's excited by that idea.
Yeah.
And so here is where we're getting to the very end, where she recruits all these different folks, basically the family, though she doesn't know they're a family, to come and help with the party because they're going to need as many hands as possible. And so that's where we start to get to our finale. And one of the things that's interesting here, and we're dealing not only with two different families, dealing with the wealthy family and this poor family, but then we're dealing with this husband and wife who are living in the sub
Mhm.
basement. And one of the things, there's a movie that inspired this movie, and Antonella happened to watch it this week, and then she loved it so much we watched it again last night. It's called The Housemaid, which is a Korean film which is made in 1960. And if you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. It's absolutely fucking bonkers. Like, it is nuts. Anyway, it is about a housemaid who comes into a family. And once she comes into the family, and they're a wealthy family, everything starts to kind of, go sideways for the family. And there's this early on kind of like, cautionary tale that be careful when you let someone else into your family. Because at that point, you no longer are in control. And we've heard those themes. Those themes have come up before in our Family Pictures podcast for
Oh
sure.
yeah. Oh, that's the hand that rocks the cradle.
Exactly,
Too.
right? So, and then this is an amazing film. Actually, this film was part of a whole like early Korean film kind of renaissance. Well, not even renaissance, like the explosion of Korean film. I guess there were like 200 films made a year. They had a gigantic industry, something I did not know. I always thought the Korean film industry was kind of really exploded and came to its own in the 90s. Turns out that's not the case. I read a great Criterion article about this. The point I'm trying to make is this: that film, The Housemaid, was preserved only by chance. And, the preservation of it is amazing. That's a story in and of itself. But 70% of those thousands of films that were made for, 15, 20 years in Korea were all lost. And they were lost because the film, they were a very kind of recycle conscious culture during that time. And they decided that the film would be better used to make straw hats or silverware. And so 70% of their cultural heritage of film was lost. This film, The Housemaid, made by Kim Ki-young, was preserved, and he was kind of, his career just kind of in the 90s, they brought him back and he went on film circuits, or was supposed to, although he tragically died in a house fire, so was never able to. But the maker of Parasite was one of that new generation of filmmakers who completely celebrated and brought this, film, and like, this is what Korean film was, and we forgot that it existed in this way. And I understand, but The Housemaid and Parasite are like two birds of a feather. Like, they are so similar in a lot of ways, and The Housemaid is just as amazing in so many ways. But I can see Parasite when people say it relates, and I didn't even know this. Antonella found this, and then when I was doing the Parasite stuff, I'm like, wait, this guy was completely inspired by Housemaid, and I could see why. And it's the first thing I thought when I started to watch Housemaid, but then confirmed it with other people writing about it. So it's interesting for me that Korea has a much longer cinematic history than I imagine. And of course, that's my Western US kind of blinders there, and I acknowledge that. But it's also interesting that so much of that heritage was lost. And the
Yeah.
filmic histories of that movie, The Housemaid, but so many, this textual histories of the films, is fascinating. So that's my little aside, Michael, to say that this was an interesting kind of like, run into the history of Korean film, which I thought was
Yeah.
more recent. And obviously I was wrong. But then some of those old school films are just insane. But sadly, so many of them were lost.
Yeah, that's too bad. But I'm definitely gonna watch that film, The Houseman.
You
I'll
should
find a way to watch it. I'm like your son. I can figure stuff like that out.
find it,
Yeah.
Google it.
Um, and so, I mean, in its aside later, I mean, the final scenes of this film are it's a culminating to this tragedy that we were expecting to play out, right? Like the plan, there is no plan. The Kim family is forced into, they're conscripted into supporting the Parks for their fanciful party, and it's tragic how Kiwoo, as Kevin, is making out with Dahae up in her room, and he's wondering aloud to her, like, do I fit in here? And she's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But in reality, he knows he's lesser and he doesn't. And, we have Kai-tek, Mr. Kim, being conscripted into playing cowboys and Indians with Dong-ik, Mr. Park. and he's really, really on the edge of basically saying "fuck you" to him, but he's holding it in and holding it in. And Mr. Park's perceiving this, and he's like, "Dude, you're getting paid extra." And this is the line that speaks of
Yeah.
the wells in the wealthy's mind. All that matters is like, I can justify using you and doing anything to you as long as I'm paying you enough, right? Or paying you just enough, whatever that might be. And the chaos ensues where Gyung-se gets out because of Ki-woo thinking he's going to be able to kind of knock him over with. We haven't even talked about the Scholar Rock from early in the movie, not that it really matters. and he ends up getting brained by Gyung-se, and a bloody Gyung-se just wanders into this like a homeless man because no one's seen him literally in 40 years. And this beautiful party gets disrupting, and then everybody gets stabbed. I mean, poor Kim Young is immediately stabbed by Gyung-se, and then he slashes at Mr. Park, and then Mr. Kim goes to his daughter, and Mr. Park's like, "What?" And he goes up to Gyung-se, and he's like, and he's saying, Mr. Park, he's like, "How the fuck do you know my name?" And it's absolute
And he's
chaos.
like,
And then
respect.
yeah, it's nuts.
That's so
And
weird.
Kyung Suk is like, Gyung-se is trying to kill, the woman that killed his wife, right? And she takes a shish kebab steak and pokes him and kills him through the side, and then it all falls apart. And then there's this random, we see Dahae is like rescued Ki-woo and somehow has this massive boy on her shoulders despite her little body, and is walking him out as everybody's escaping. And then finally, the thing that's probably the most important moment is, Mr. Park is yelling at Mr. Kim, "Throw me the keys, give me the keys." And he's like, he throws them, but they end up underneath the Gyung-se, who's dying now, and he has to roll him over, and he holds his nose like, oh my God, he smells so bad.
Exactly.
Right. And this is the last straw. And Kai-tek grabs a knife and stabs Dong-kyik to death, and he escapes. And so tragedy abound. But the thing that's ultimately funny is there's this bizarre postscript where we learn that Ki-woo and his mother Kyung-suk have gotten probation, they've gotten out, and Ki-young sadly has died, and Kai-tek, Mr. Kim, is missing. And we learn that Ki-woo discovers he's in the basement. He's retreated and is now the one hiding from society,
Totally.
hiding from the authorities. And Ki-woo's like, "I have a plan, father." And he finally figures this out, and he's like, "I'm going to get you out." And it's a kind of classic epilogue. It reminds me of Brazil, this fantasy of like having, been the hero and rescued the princess and taken her away, winging her off into a better world. And then it is in Brazil, he wakes up dead, right? And if you recall, because he's been interrogated to death and tortured to death. And in a similar way, after he has this fantastic imagining of like, "I'm going to be wealthy, Dad, I'll buy the house, and all you'll have to do is walk out of the basement." And then it goes right back to the semi-basement, and he just says, "Until then."
Yeah.
And so we're, and he's not going to escape, and there's like subreddits that talk about, it's like, yeah, he'd have to work for 350 years before he'd be able to afford to get him out, and that's the tragedy of like the disparity ultimately that we're left with. And that's our final thoughts. I mean, or you might read like, maybe he does succeed in doing this. Maybe it was a projection, not just a fantasy. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't buy it, but like the fact that it starts where it began in the sub basement is very telling, almost with the same shot, right? So really puts you back where you were. Interesting side note about this film is, the actor who played Park?
Mr. Park?
Mr. Park. No, not Mr. Park. The father of the. I'm not as good with names as you. You've been really amazing with these.
I keep them up so I remember them all.
I'm impressed. So, the one who was the father of who lived in the wealthy house, the rich house.
Yeah. Oh, the one who plays Dong-kyik. Yeah, that's Lee Sung-kyung.
Yes, he committed suicide.
In real life?
In real life. And supposedly the authorities basically found that, he had drugs, and that was a serious offense. and that his career was
Oh, right.
over, and so that he was,
Yeah.
committed suicide. But Bong Joon-ho
Right.
was like, I think there's something else going on here. There's got to be an investigation into this. So that's a
Really?
weird kind of open
Yeah, yeah.
piece that me and Antonella heard last year, and we were like, "What?"
Yeah,
Like,
I'm looking at the Wikipedia now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's an interesting piece. Obviously, not to our reading, but if you're a fan of this movie, that's one of the things that happened post facto, where it was like, "Wow, what happened there?"
Yeah. I mean, it speaks to something that I mean, it's when we're as Americans like reading another culture's filmmaking. There's so much we don't really know, and
Of
there is
course,
like
yeah,
something about like there's a sense of moralism in South Korean society that you through K-pop culture I've heard of, and like when a star goes astray by having an affair, and like then suddenly their entire career is destroyed. It's like America in like the 30s, like we're 100 years past that, literally, And so, yeah, there's those kind of differences. It would be really great to hear. It'd be
yeah,
hard to hear, but I would like to know all the things that we're missing that are very specific to that culture that we're not getting. And
yeah.
I'm sure there's dozens of bits that we would love to hear about.
There are tons, but I think the movie does transcend those in a lot
Yeah,
of
it
ways
does.
and deals
Yeah.
with class in ways I just don't think American films are up to dealing with. They're not
Not
nearly as
often,
courageous, and
except for Down and Out Beverly Hills.
that it's the slums of Beverly Hills. How many times do I tell you that?
All right, Jim. That's another one in the books. Thanks to everybody for listening in.